Okay, welcome to CTO Insights Miami. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. It's exactly 1 year ago we held our first CTO Insights here in Miami. So seeing this community of technology leaders has grown in the city is so inspiring for me. So thank you so much for joining us today. For those who don't know me, my name is Laura. I help with communications for Asia, the company that sponsored these events. Asia is a technology company based here in the United States that provides different services like software development, data analysis, and managed IT service. So if you want to know more information about the company, please feel free to talk to our team members, Brian or Jonathan, and they will talk to you for these services about the company. Now I would like to introduce our special speaker for today. He's Igor Royzis. He is Fractional CTO and a startup advisor. He has over 20 years of experience leading tech initiatives with startups specializing in cloud strategies, data, and artificial intelligence. He has guided different companies from initial ideas to product delivery in focusing on innovations, scalability, and market fit in sectors like fintech, healthcare, and retail. Additionally, he has co-founded companies like Kinect Consulting and Carepass, and he holds a U.S. patent in data distribution technology. So we are so lucky to have a speaker like him here today with us. So please, let's give him a special welcome. And Igor, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you, Laura. So it looks like some people have wine. Drink more, this way I'm going to sound smarter. So we're going to talk about startups. How many of you are building startups right now? Great. How many of you have built startups before? Awesome. Who wants to build startup but hasn't started yet? All right, awesome. So building startups is very different than scaling companies. Why? Because the approach is very different, the goals are very different. This talk is going to be about MVP. Everyone knows what MVP stands for. And Eric Ries, who actually I think coined the acronym MVP, said that MVP is the way to get the most learning with the minimum effort. And he's the one who basically started the whole lean startup movement. So let's talk about a little bit so that you get an idea of what I've done, so that you know I'm not bullshitting here. So yeah, if you start looking at the year, already I'm aging myself here, but I've been at this game for about 25 years. And I've started, co-founded 4 startups, and I've helped numerous other startups in the CTO and head of engineering capacity. The first journey was in 2000 with a company called Modelwire. Funny story, the first day I came to work, I walk into CEO's office, the founder's office, and he says, Igor, we're going to get together with the team in half an hour. That's your office right there. You see that guy sitting over there at the desk? He's not working out. You need to let him go. So, lesson learned, and the lesson is, as a founder, you can tell anyone to do anything that you don't want to do. Then I joined a company called Sensei here in Boca Raton. It was ahead of its time, and we were building mobile solutions for the health and wellness industry. And that was when you had to actually code for different device types. You had to code in Brew and obviously Android and Swift and flip phones. So it was a big effort. It was an interesting company. We were loaded with money, $10 million worth of money. So we were burning it like there is no tomorrow. Lesson learned, if you have the money, treat it really carefully, because eventually the company went under. 2010 to 2013, this is when I co-founded my first startup. I met with a brilliant investment banker who persuaded me to become a co-founder and a CTO. This guy right here. Okay. Come on, raise your hand, Tony. That's the guy. We met and became co-founders. We're best friends now, and we built an incredible business. We built a startup, fully self-funded. It became the biggest mergers and acquisitions marketplace in the world. It was in Miami, so when we tried to raise money, people looked at us and said, "You're not in Silicon Valley, you're not in New York, we're not going to give you money." So instead, we got approached by a public company and they acquired us. So that was a great experience. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Carepass, funny enough, Tony and I started Carepass together. So that just tells you the lesson is, when you work together with someone, keep working together. If it's not the same idea, it's going to be a different idea. And another lesson is, being a solo founder is hard. Whether you are a business solo founder or a technical solo founder, it's hard. So it's always good to have a team, 2, 3. Founded a consulting company, ran it for 7 years. Working on another idea right now, kind of in stealth mode. And my primary job right now is offering fractional CTO and startup advisory services. So let's play a little game. Take a look at these answers and think about what the questions are. I'll give you a minute. And don't worry, I'll share the slides later. Whoever needs it, just connect with me. All right, I'm revealing the answers. You probably all guessed, but startups are exciting. There are many reasons why people want to build startups. Those are listed there. But startups fail. I don't know what the actual number is. They say 95% fail. Whatever the number is, majority of startups fail. Key traits of successful founders. Yeah, you have to have certain personality to be a founder. It's not for everyone. It's not just about a drive. It's about being able to push forward, knowing that you're going to fail along the way multiple times, being able to adapt and adjust and keep pushing forward. And another walk down memory lane. There were multiple eras of startups, from the dot-com era, right? And then the MVP focus was these websites, consumer-focused websites. People were getting money just by presenting a one-page executive summary. I've been there. Then we went and started talking about agile and lean startup movement. That's the Eric Ries with the lean startups. Then the mobile app boom. Everyone is creating mobile apps. And millions of apps. Most didn't make any money. SaaS and marketplaces, there was an era for that. Then data-driven products, and some started experimenting with machine learning even before normal people started using ChatGPT. And now we're in this AI race. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. Somebody said that pretty soon we're going to see on LinkedIn people putting in their summaries, ex-AI expert doing normal things now. All right, so let's, this is hypothetical startup that I'm going to try to kind of use throughout the talk. Tail Whisperer is an AI-powered dog training app that uses smart sensors and a connected collar to provide real-time feedback. Okay, so again, hypothetical, but let's see how we can wire it into the talk. So I call this the startup framework. This is something that I feel if you go by the book through all these steps, the chance of success is much higher than if you don't. As simple as that. Now, you can build a startup without going through these steps. For example, if you're technical, you're a full stack engineer, you can sit over the weekend and develop something quickly and then start getting feedback. Forget about the steps. You're already at the launch step, right? But how many of those exist? Not very many, right? And to have success, you got to go, and each of these actually, I can have a presentation for each of these boxes, and it's going to take an hour to go through each of these. But just to get an idea, and some of these, actually most of these, are probably obvious to all of you guys, but we often skip them. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm the offender of that. Many times I skip many steps. Why? Because, oh, it's my idea, it's my vision, I believe in it, and I don't need to validate it. I'm creating something super cool, but what is the problem that I'm solving by creating this super cool feature? So let's try and go through these. I color-coded these because they kind of belong to each. The top three belong to one category, the next two belong to the next category, etc. So the vision, I just mentioned the problem. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone knows it. You don't build a startup just because you have a great idea. You build a startup because you know a specific problem exists and you have something, an idea that solves that problem. That problem could be big, could be small, but it's a real problem and you know how to solve it. So that's the first step. What's the next step? Well, let's go back to Tail Whisperer. What is the problem? The problem is many dog owners have issues with dogs' behavior. And you know, they don't have the money to hire trainers, and they just don't know what to do. And these dogs are misbehaving, and that's a problem. We know it's a problem. Now, let's go to the next step. We need to talk to the potential users, right? So what do? I guess we'll go to the dog park. And we're going to start talking to dog owners. And what are the questions we're going to ask? We're going to ask them, would you like to have a solution with a collar that gives a real-time feedback? No, that's the wrong approach. Leading questions kill this entire exercise. We need to ask, what are the problems you're having? How are you dealing with these problems right now? What would a good solution look like? Don't tell them that I have something in mind, because it's going to skew the feedback, right? Gauging interest without building. How do you do that? I mean, it's easier said than done. Well, in many cases, you can just build a landing page with some teaser information there, maybe on social media, and sign-up forms. If you're interested in being an early adopter, put your email here. Yeah, sounds primitive, but it works in many cases. You don't even need to build anything to to see if people are interested. Once you are comfortable with your idea, you validated the problem, you interviewed the users, potential users, you gauge the interest, now you need to do market research. Important step. Yeah, competition is healthy, everyone knows it, but don't just brush it off and say, yeah, competition is healthy, I know there are competitors, and my product is gonna be better, but how do you know that? You need to do market research, understand who the competition is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of their products, their solutions. If what you're trying to build is your competitor's unique value proposition, don't do it. You're competing with someone who is popular already, right? You need to pivot, because if they're already doing something really good, unless you're, Sam Altman building another, LLM. Don't compete head to head. Find maybe a slight pivot so that you can compete with that solution solving similar problem, but doing it better than them because you found where their solutions have disadvantages, right? Or gaps in the market in general. And then we're talking about success metrics, vision and goals. What is the goal of your MVP? Are you trying to get a handful of early adopters to use your MVP? Or are you just trying to get as much feedback as possible? Or are you preparing to get some investment money? What is that goal? You cannot just have it all and say, yeah, once MVP is ready, then I'll decide what I want to do with it. You need to decide what exactly you're trying to do with building that MVP. If you know you're going to run out of money, then maybe it's getting investors interested, right? If you know exactly who your target market is, you have these 5 people or 5 companies that you know will use your product, they're early adopters, maybe that's the goal. If you know there's hundreds or thousands of people who may give it a try and give you a good feedback, maybe that's the goal. Again, determining what that goal is, and then what are the metrics? How do you measure once you launch? You need to decide it up front. Well, it's number of quality feedbacks, or I don't know, the number of VC appointments, meetings. So again, this planning will allow you to later on decide on the MVP features. Speaking of features, now you know what you're building, you know what your market is, you know what your goals are. You have 100 different, 200 different things in your head. I want my product to do all these things. All right, well, those of you who have been in software development, you know, there is something called a backlog. You just put everything, all the features, you brainstorm, you put all the features in that backlog, and then you start prioritizing. You prioritize, out of those 100, you prioritize them, you decide that these 25 features is the minimum amount of features I need to build to achieve my MVP goals. That's it. You put it in the sandbox. Everything else becomes your backlog. You can prioritize the backlog and say, yeah, eventually I'll build these in this order, but it's not important. What's important is, what is that minimum feature set that you want to build for your MVP? And then for us, those who are technical folks, who are technical here? Nice. For those of us technical folks, this is where the fun begins, right? Now, you have this level of comfort that you're going to build something really good. Now you're going to think about the technology. What is the technical feasibility? So Tail Whisper, it sounds like a simple product, but it's not, right? You need a collar, you need embedded communication from the collar to the mobile device. It's not just building a mobile app or a website, right? So you start thinking about those things. What can go wrong? Where do I get, who's going to manufacture this color? Do I find one that exists and then I customize it? So you got to start thinking about those things. Tech stack, another fun part. We're getting more and more fun right now. Selecting tech stack. If you're technical, just stick with what you know. Forget about these new things. If you know React.js, no need to go to Flutter. If you know AWS, no need to go to GCP. Don't worry about, oh, these give me $1,000 credit, these give me $5,000 credit. Forget about it. This is not gonna save you. What's gonna save you is developing things fast because you know your tech stack. Especially if you're a full stack engineer, great. Now, if you're a business founder, then there's a few options here. One option is what Tony did. He found the technical co-founder. Another option is you hire someone. And again, the tech stack is going to be driven by that technical person. Whatever that person knows the best, then that person may help you find an agency, a software agency, if you're a business founder, to work on that tech stack. Why do you want your technical founder, co-founder, or CTO to know the tech stack that you're using to develop your MVP? Because that's just logical, right? Why hire someone who is going to be just a pure manager? You need your co-founder to be technical. And if they need to roll the sleeves and write some code, why not? In the initial phases, nothing wrong with that. Who knows what MVA stands for? I came up with it. Quick. Minimum viable architecture. So we'll talk about minimum viable. Why not talk about minimum viable architecture? Technical folks try to, when they envision the platform, the architecture, they start thinking about scalability too soon, too early. There is no need to create something that's going to support 1 million users once you launch the MVP. No need for that. That's going to take you much more time. You're not going to get 1 million users in a long time. So just make it scale to 1,000. But the architecture has to be designed in a way where if you need to scale it, you don't need to rewrite anything. You just add things, whether it's auto scaling or adding more containers or virtual machines, whatever that architecture is. Scaling should be easy, but it should not be driving your efforts. Does that make sense? This is the big one. In my opinion, the most important one. The team. I kind of touched on this, technical founders versus non-technical founders, but there's many more players there, or I should say many more roles there when you build an MVP. And one person may wear multiple hats. One could be both an architect, an engineer, and someone who builds integration tests, right? Because you're bootstrapping, or you got some friends or family give you a little bit of money. It's not. I'd say majority of the startups go that route. Raising money is difficult. That's a completely different topic that would require another talk, and that's a full-time job for someone, for that one person to do fundraising. It's very difficult. So, what are those roles, right? Let's take in our tail whisper example. We're going to need UX designers to design that experience for the AI training and the insights that the dog owners see on their mobile apps. We're going to need embedded engineers or engineer to work with the color, dog color. We're going to need developers, whether it's full stack or front-end and back-end developers. There's pros and cons depending on what you're building. We'll need QA folks. So that's your technical team. But at some point, before you launch, you have to start preparing for the launch. So you'll need marketing folks. Probably too soon at this stage to think about the operations people, because as a founder, you should be, if you're a business founder, you should be the operations person in the beginning. I've seen startups where they actually go and start searching for these co-founding COO, co-founding CMO. Too soon. It's not necessary. Down the road, as you launch your MVP, maybe you need more people, but as a founder, you have to run everything yourself. Don't micromanage, but have a finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. Yeah, that's again, that's where the fun really begins. It used to be, until maybe a few years ago, that when people build startups, they just, they hire an agency or they hire developers, and they almost overlook the UX aspect of what they're building. UX is super important. People have very short attention span. If they go to a website or they open the app and it's cumbersome, I don't know, where do I click? Do I slide, or it's inconsistent? The colors, the fonts, the pages. You need a UX person to design that user experience, or UX team. And in my experience, you should separate the UX exercise from your development agency. Because if you allow the software company that you hire, and normally you hire a few people, right? You hire your 1 or 2 pizza teams. They say, oh yeah, we have a designer, no problem. We'll design it for you as well. The quality you get, in most cases, is just subpar. Not good. So UX is a separate exercise. And UX goes through multiple phases, right? It's not just somebody gives you concepts and, oh, this is a good concept, now let's develop it. No, it goes through, low fidelity, maybe interactive prototypes, maybe even medium fidelity, or just jump straight to high fidelity. But what you give to developers, or if you're a developer and what UX team does, they give it to you, let's say they produce Figma designs, that has to be high fidelity. Why? Because you don't want to think as a developer developing those web pages or mobile pages, but what font size do I use here? You just take, for example, with Figma, you can just take and convert the design into all the styles you need. So you save a lot of time there. Product roadmap, super important. So everyone probably heard of agile methodologies, and everyone went through over the years, strict Scrum or Kanban or this or that, and pair programming, and all the variety of different agile methodologies. What's important is defining milestones. Within those milestones, define the deliverables. That's important. And manage or gauge the progress for each of those milestones. That's important. Whether you use Jira or Trello or any other tool, it doesn't really matter. As long as you keep track of things. This is my milestone. I'm building an AI-powered dog training module. That's my milestone. Another milestone is my embedded device on the dog collar. That's another milestone. Maybe another milestone is the user insights. So all the feedback, all the information flowing back and forth. So divide it into these kind of major categories. Some people heard the words like epics in agile world, but those are your milestones. Very important. And then create a timeline, right? Product development. This is what takes probably 80% of the time. This is where things can go wrong pretty quickly if you are not on top of things every day. So I'm working with different clients as a fractional CTO. And when I said that I need to be on a daily call with the development team, the founder is like, Really, why do you need to talk to them every day? Why can't they just give you a report at the end of each week and then you correct course? So because 1 week, you can lose a lot of progress and then they have to correct course. I'd rather spend 15, 20 minutes every day and everyone is going with the right path, the right pace, than discover at the end of the week that they screwed up. And everyone screws up, I screw up, we all screw up. So it's better to know sooner than later. Yeah, iterative development. We all heard of that. What does that mean? It means that instead of taking this big feature and developing it from beginning to end, and then you just go and see what the result is, you actually go in iterations. You develop a little bit that can be tested, that's functional, then you develop more and more and more. That's the iterative development, because that's another way to manage risks, to manage screw-ups, to be able to pivot if necessary sooner than later. QA, self-explanatory, and this is one thing that business founders sometimes miss. They feel that when the software agency delivers the code, that's it, ready to be launched. That's not true. There's multiple layers of quality assurance. Obviously, it goes without saying that developers should be doing their own unit testing. And that is when they develop a piece of code, they need to test that little piece of code in isolation. That's a unit testing. Simple, but many don't do it. Integration testing, that little piece of code that's been now tested in isolation now needs to be tested in conjunction with the rest of the connecting pieces. So you're integrating it, right? You need to do integration testing. UAT is a little tricky because it depends, right? Who is the user here? UAT stands for user acceptance testing. In most cases, you as a founder is the user. So when the software agency says, our QA has done all the testing, it's ready, now you need to do user acceptance testing. Maybe for the tail whisperer, the actual dog owners are going to be user testers, right? Maybe you release alpha, unofficial version, alpha version, and you ask dog owners to please test it for free. Give me some feedback. Tell me if it works or not. So again, it depends on what you're building. But usually it's the founders, the startup itself that does the user acceptance test. Yeah, fixing bugs. There's always bugs. Even when you launch, there will be bugs. There will always be bugs. And if you have, as a founder, you have this $50,000 to build something, and you launch, and you have $1,000 left in the bank, and you're thinking, I'm good? No, you're not. Everything takes, I usually advise founders, everything takes at least double the time, at least double the money. All right, I guess almost there, right? So what's our go-to-market strategy? What is the plan? How are we launching it? Are we going on social media? Are we doing email campaigns? How are we preparing our target initial early adopters, initial users, so that they know we're going to be launching? Is it going to be a big splash, or is it going to be almost in stealth mode, because it's going to be just 5 early adopters using the thing? So even though you push it to the public, app stores, the website, you don't want to make a big splash maybe, because you're not ready. You want to get a lot of feedback. Or maybe you do want a big splash. You want things to break fast so you can fix them fast. And then we'll launch the MVP, and this is where things actually start getting interesting. Because now you built it, you dealt with problems internally while building it. Now you have to deal with problems externally, right? Because now people can use it. People can give you terrible reviews on app stores. People can start writing things, and especially if you start charging right away. which I actually feel it's better. But many founders are afraid to ask for money. I'm going to give it out away for free to gain some traction. But in many cases, it's not a good idea. So start charging right away. But you start charging, people are going to start complaining. They're going to start calling you, emailing you. Do you have the infrastructure to support those customer support requests, right? So you have to think about it. So now we launched. Now is the time that we've been waiting for. Is it the feedback? Is it measuring results? What are we doing next? Are we going to pivot? Because the feedback tells us that even though your core idea is good, but you should do something different. Or are we going to scale? Because everyone is giving you a thumbs up, you're gaining traction. Now you go from 1,000, you start thinking about going from 1,000 users to 1 million users. So that decision is made based on the feedback loop that we introduced after the MVP launch. I don't know if you can guys, yeah, you can see this. So everything I talked about in general sounds right, sounds good. But you guys are building different startups. And if we don't have time for this, but if each one just tells us what they're building, it's probably going to fit one or two or maybe a few more of these key factors. And how you build your startup depends on those key factors. Are you building well, first of all, are you a non-technical founder or a technical founder? Right? And then there are some challenges and solutions. So I tried to kind of put together what would be the biggest challenge for each of these key factors, and what is the solution to overcome that challenge possibly, or minimize the risks? Are you building a B2B or a B2C business? Is it a marketplace? Is it high-tech or low-tech? So, Tail Whisper, what is it, a high-tech or a low-tech? I think it's a high-tech. Why? Because of this embedding piece, right? So that factor, that's a big factor. Money, I mean, we don't talk about money much, but most startups fail because they're out of money. It's not because they have bad engineering teams. It's not because they have a bad idea. It's because they don't have enough room to see the idea through, to get the right feedback, to implement this feedback loop, and have enough money to do this, right? So when I said I tell people it's double the time, double the money, how about adding a little buffer and saying 3 times the time, 3 times the money? If you go with that approach, then you minimize the risks. I work with the client, and there was enough money, seemingly, and then at some point, all of a sudden, the founder said, we need to take that team of 5 engineers, full-time 5 engineers, and we need to get rid of 4 and bring the 5th one, who was the most senior, to part-time, full maintenance mode. Why? Because all of a sudden, money just disappeared. So I think I zoomed through this really fast. Please ask me questions.
So there's a green slide with stages where we need to compare